Our guest today needs no introduction, but I think he needs a new nickname. So I reached out to ChatGTP for some ideas, and here's what it came up with: the Lone Ranger, the Debt Vader, Sherlock Loans, Borrower's Oracle, the Debt Detective. I don't know if any of those are very brilliant, but they did make me chuckle a little. Welcome, student loan expert David Gurley.
Hi, how are you guys doing? It's great to be back once again. We were just talking a couple of months ago, right? But back for more.
That is what's so crazy. And I think, again, that is what captures the state of student loans. But I have to ask you before we move on, do any of those nicknames, catch your fancy?
I kind of like the Lone Ranger.
The
That's
Lone
fun.
Ranger,
Fun.
you should get a cowboy hat. You come in and clean up messes. I mean, I kind of like it.
That's a good one.
Okay, you are now known as the Lone Ranger. All right, David. So we literally interviewed you just a short time ago on June 13th, 2025. I asked you to sum up the state of student loans in one word. Do you remember that word?
Chaos.
So everything now, I'm sure, is tranquil, serene, chill. David, how would you sum up the state of student loans on September 2nd, 2025?
More chaos. So one of the things that I give a pretty good amount of presentations and webinars and podcasts like this, and one of the things that I use as kind of the intro to those is that Pablo Picasso is quoted as saying, I don't know if he said it or not, but he's quoted as saying, "Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist." And I think that that applies heavily in the student loan world because there are so many different nuances and rules that if you don't have an understanding around them or don't understand how they work, then you can't apply them to your own personal situation and take advantage of some of the things that are available that you might not know are available.
Well, clearly there is an art to what you do, David. We have seen you firsthand work your artistry on student loans. I'll never forget the event we did when you asked some of the attendees in advance to send their situations, and you looked at them before we had the event, and you saved tens of thousands of dollars, maybe up to 40, 50, $60,000 for people. And David, this is not black and white stuff. This is very gray. So Pablo Picasso painted, vividly. You have to go into the shadows, David, to extract answers. Would you say that's the way to sum it up?
Yeah, for sure. And the interesting thing about that was it was during a time that was the IDR waiver, which was a really great time because I could go into podcasts, events, school districts, and just like, I felt like Oprah, like your loans are forgiven, your loans are forgiven. And the climate has changed a little bit since that time, and I think borrowers are feeling that as well. But before we move on, one of the things that I want people to know is that the effects of the IDR waiver are still in place. And so there are still people that are sitting on those golden tickets that have not taken advantage of them now. I see it every once in a while. It's not as prevalent as I saw it before. But what I mean by that is that the IDR waiver, what it did was it took months that did not previously count for credit and allowed them to count for credit. So sometimes it was whenever you were on a different repayment plan that was not an income driven repayment plan. Sometimes you were in forbearance or deferment periods. And so some of these older teachers and educators who are sitting on student loans actually can go back and just submit those PSLF applications, which another way to say the PSLF application is the employer verification form. They can submit those and still have their loans forgiven. The biggest, I'd say, difference between the two situations is that back then, if you had those FFEL loans, you could do a consolidation of them and then apply, and they would all be forgiven. Now, if you have those FFEL loans, you're toast. There's nothing that you can do. No credit will count for them at all if you were to consolidate them over to direct loans, and you would have to start at zero to try to get forgiveness in the future. So it's not as advantageous, but there still are so many people that don't know that they qualify for student loan forgiveness right now who are not taking advantage.
Okay, someone's listening. They think they might qualify. What do you recommend they do right now?
The easiest route, if you want to go into it blindly, is just make sure that you have every single month of employment certified and turned into the Department of Education. You can do that well, the easiest way is to go to studentaid.gov and to fill out the PSLF application online. But you can also print it and have usually HR will sign off on it and have those uploaded. The other thing that I see a lot of is that people, even the employers, don't understand, and this is not even at all what I was going to talk about today, but the employers don't understand how adjunct professor timeline counts. And so I have a decent number of adjunct professors that find me and they say, hey, none of this time's qualifying. And I will write up a little summary for them to give to their HR, because basically every hour that they're working is multiplied by 3.35 because they're an adjunct professor. So they're saying not only are you doing the classroom work, but you have time away from the classroom that's being used to prepare and to come into your class. And so you may not be working a 40-hour work week like a K-12 teacher, but you should still be given credit for that time as well. And so I will see people that will say, oh, my university is not counting this time. And they will have, let's say, 10 credit hours that they're teaching. Well, multiplied by 3.35, boom, they qualify for PSLF under the terms. You have to have at least 30 hours of employment each week.
Well, as someone who's done a lot of adjuncting over the years, I can confirm that each hour of instruction is at least 3.5 hours of preparation and then grading after the fact. So, wow, David, I'd never heard that before about that category of employee. And I think this is an example, again, of the artistry you display in getting these student loans reduced.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard that either. It's kind of genius. But here's the question I have that given that the government receives or has access, I don't know, I guess I don't know if they have access to, but they get W-2s, and W-2s are tied to employer identification numbers, which are tied to a tax status. Why aren't, I guess, well, I got a few answers already going through my brain, but why can't they just forgive the loans for the people that they know already have the years, the months, based on the information that they have, or at least send something out that says, we think you are that close if you do this? Like, what prevents them from preemptively reaching out and saying your loans are forgiven because we know you've worked at this employer for 10 years and that qualifies, yada, yada, yada. I have some ideas of why they can't, but like, what prevents them from doing that?
I think you're asking the right questions, but you're definitely asking the wrong person. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. I think that we like to overcomplicate things. I mean, look at our tax, if we just look at the tax history of the United States compared to other countries, why do we do the things that we do? I don't know. We overcomplicate it and make it more challenging than it needs to be. But that's a good point. And again, probably that's something that you need to push higher up on than some guy in Kansas City, Missouri, and you need to be talking to somebody in Washington, D.C.
Okay, well, I was just hoping that you had some sort of connection that could be like, hey, wave a magic wand and it's all done.
Well, isn't it the same reason that we don't have automatic tax filing where they have all the information? Every other first world country, it's a 10-minute process, right? I think it's the profit motive, right?
Yeah,
This is not profitable for segments of the business side of things for this to be made simple and transparent.
I would agree with that. So
Uh, Go
I've got
ahead,
a
Scott.
couple of things that I think would be important for us to talk about, but most of them stem around the changes that are currently taking place since the last time that we talked, and including the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that I know you guys just did a podcast on. I haven't had the time to listen to it just yet, so I don't know if there will be some overlapping information on that. But I think that this would be really good for borrowers to know and kind of understand the changes that are taking place right now. You guys want to go that direction?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And we skipped over student loans because we had planned on doing a portion. I mean, I think we
yeah.
might have touched on it very briefly. So yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. Go
So
ahead.
the biggest thing is that the repayment plan changes are going to start taking place. And this is probably the biggest. Well, there's two big pieces that come from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But the first one is that there are going to be repayment plan changes. So right now we have, well, a bunch of repayment plans. We've got ones that do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. We've got the graduated and the extended. Those are both set to be eliminated. They're gone. Then under the income driven repayment plan umbrella, we have income contingent repayment, ICR. We've got income based repayment, the old version and the new version, depending on when you took out your student loans. We have pay. We once had repay, that turned into save. And now we have the introduction of the new repayment plan called the Repayment Assistance Program, RAP. That's a lot of things, right? That's a mess. So so here's where we're at right now. Repay is gone. It turned into save. Save is most likely gone, but it hasn't been eliminated yet. They kicked the can down the road. They were supposed to have a 100% final ruling on August 5th. That then they said, well, we're actually going to need 90 more days before we can finalize this, which I think will continue to move down the road. My guess on this one, this is just a personal guess, but I think they're waiting until July of 2026 until the repayment assistance program is live before they officially close save. So that's my own opinion on that. Then we have the income contingent repayment and pay, which you can currently get into and you can currently stay on, but that's set to close by 2028, potentially sooner, depending on how things shake out. But it's supposed to be where you have to apply for those before July 1st of 2026, but then you could stay on them until 2028. And then we have the two that are sticking around. So we've got income-based repayment, the old version and new version of that, which is 100% this arbitrary date of if you took loans out before or after July 1st of 2014. And then the new repayment plan, which is called the Repayment Assistance Program. And if you take out loans or consolidate loans, that's an important factor right there, consolidation of loans. If you take out a new loan or consolidate old loans after July 1st of 2026, that will be the only income driven repayment plan that you will be eligible for, is the Repayment Assistance Program. And that has very, very, very big ramifications if you qualify for the new version of the income based repayment. So that's a lot of things that I just said there, and it gets so confusing. And I understand that if somebody's listening to this, especially I listen to it at 1.5 speed on my podcast player. So if I'm listening to this, I was like, what just happened right there, right? So
Yeah, break that down.
After July 1st, basically you're going to have income. Well, if you take out loans after July 1st, 2026, you'll have the repayment assistance program. Anybody will be eligible to move to that RAP payment plan, but doing so, and the other big thing is that if you move to RAP, you can't undo it based on what they're saying right now. And so you need to make that decision not only based on your income today, but where you think your income will go over time. There will also be changes on all of these repayment plans. As far as PSLF, you make your 120 payments, you're done. If you're not going for PSLF and you're going for long-term forgiveness, the new version of that IBR has a 20-year forgiveness window. The old version of IBR has a 25-year window before you can get the long-term forgiveness. This new payment plan, RAP, has a 30-year repayment before you would get forgiveness. So you just need to be it's one of those where if you make the wrong decision, it's going to really, really affect you.
I just I get so frustrated for people in this situation. They have to make this decision most will not have ever heard of you, David, or have listened to a podcast or researched it.
I think most people have heard the Teach and Retire Rich podcast. So I think that this is
I
maybe
would
not everybody.
I would love it. You flatter us, and I'm not sure we deserve that flattery. I put myself in the shoes of a teacher who is overwhelmed, might have a family, and then there's this. How are they being? We did obviously did not prepare for this question. Do you know if they're being notified? Are people given the information and told you need to make this decision? Is there any kind of support?
At the end of every single piece of information that you receive from the loan servicers, one of the things that makes me kind of chuckle a little bit is at the very bottom of it, it says, you never need to pay for any assistance with your student loans. You can always reach out to your loan servicer for free. And that while that is true, most of the time they don't provide very accurate information or very helpful information. As a matter of fact, a lot of time, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's been times where what the rep from the loan servicers has recommended is blatant fraud, which I wouldn't recommend being fraudulent on any of your student loan activities. So the answer is that no, they do get some communication. It's kind of hit or miss on what they're going to get, but the way that the communication is delivered is always in such legalese that people can't even decipher what it means. And so for example, right now, August 1st, 2025, the SAVE plan, you didn't get kicked out of the SAVE plan, but interest started accruing again if you're on the SAVE plan. Well, guess what? If you're on PSLF, interest accrual doesn't matter anyway, so no big deal. But the way that they worded it, I started getting these letters sent in from tons of different people like, hey, can you tell me what this means? Hey, can you tell me what this means? And my response back was essentially like, hey, nothing changes with your plan. Like we're good. It's the interest accrual will start building back up. But the way that it's worded is so frustrating and doesn't make sense necessarily that even when it's something as simple as, hey, your interest is going to start accruing again, it's a one-page document filled with a bunch of clutter that doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know what they can do, right? There's something called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Is that okay? Is that dark humor?
Oh, damn.
David, um,
Okay, I've got more things. Should we dive into more?
you please.
Okay, so with these changes, one of the other big things is that the IBR plan. So again, moving forward, at some point in time, ICR is going away, income contingent repayment, pay is going away, and you're going to be left with IBR and RAP. Those are your two options, two repayment plans. And it was before where there was a partial financial hardship requirement to be on IBR. That's no longer the case. They got rid of that. That's a big win, as a matter of fact. So what this means is that if you're a high earner, then you can still move over to IBR and not be affected by that partial financial hardship that was required before. The second thing that's interesting is that they removed the unlimited payment cap. So what that means, and this is for IBR. So your payment is now capped at a maximum of your 10-year standard repayment. Again, this probably doesn't affect a ton of teachers, but it might. I mean, it kind of depends on the scenario, but it caps it at that 10-year amount. Where that would become helpful is if you've already got a bunch of payments that you've made towards PSLF in the past, and you're still trying to get credit, but your income has gone up higher than what your student loan balance kind of would make sense for going for PSLF. This will get you to where you can still get on the income-based repayment, make that cap at the standard 10-year payment route, and still qualify for public service loan forgiveness at some point in the future. RAP does not have that cap. RAP, no cap on RAP. Kind of felt like a rap right there,
right? Hey, ChatGPT is going to pick that up.
My God, no cap.
So that's good though. We'll dive into some of these. We'll dive into some numbers here in just a minute. But before we do, the other thing that needs to be stated here is that there are almost devastating effects to Parent Plus borrowers through this bill. And so, first of all, we've talked about in the past, and I don't know which episode this was, but we had discussed the double consolidation loophole that was available, where you could essentially take Parent Plus loans, consolidate them multiple times, and by doing so, you drop the parent tag off the loans and you qualify for all the repayment plans that are available. That was done and over as of July 1st, 2025. And so then we say, okay, where are Parent Plus borrowers going to go from here? And it's not good. So the thing is that there's one more way to get into an income-based repayment moving forward. And that is, and that's only for a subset of Parent Plus borrowers. So I'll say this and then kind of backtrack a little bit. But to have access to any income-driven repayment plan, which means the only way to qualify for public service loan forgiveness. That's the asterisk on this that people don't understand. You have to have you have to have an income-driven repayment plan to qualify for public service loan forgiveness.
Right.
The only way right now for Parent Plus borrowers is to do a direct loan consolidation and get into ICR, income contingent repayment. And they have to do this by July 1st of 2026. If they don't, they will have no access to PSLF at any time moving forward. It's closed, done, over. So that's a big one. Now, the other aspect of this is that those income contingent repayment plan options are by far the worst repayment terms. And so these borrowers who are going to get their loans consolidated, get into ICR, are going to see almost astronomical payments for the next couple of years. But at some point in time, and this is the unknown of the student loan world, right? At some point in time, they say between 2026 and 2028, all of the people that are on ICR are going to get moved onto IBR, which then their repayment terms will be substantially better. So the only way to get to the good side is to endure that awful repayment plan. And what I would probably look at is, how can I not make these payments for as long as possible through things like forbearance, or if your student is still in school, taking deferment, different things like that you can do to not make the payment right now until you can get switched into IBR. But the other thing that most parent borrowers are dealing with is that most of them are getting to be close or at retirement age. So you have to kind of figure out, do I want to make these payments count now and count it for PSLF? Or am I going to try to get a lower payment in the future, but then have to extend my timeline of working to get PSLF? Or am I going to drop PSLF and go for long-term forgiveness? There's so many different routes and avenues that could take. But the other side of this whole thing is that if you take out a new Parent Plus loan after July 1st of 2026, if you take out a new Parent Plus loan after July 1st of 2026, the only repayment plan that's available to you is the standard repayment plan. That's it's a new standard repayment plan. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So that's a big, big deal. And Parent Plus borrowers are going to be screwed, for lack of a better word.
I just checked the Chat GPT and they think the new name should be Parent Minus. So for that loan. So
are you just Chat GPT, Dan?
no, that's actually me GPT. So
it's Dan.
Maybe
GPT.
not as good as
I don't. That was actually
overlords.
better. I'm like spending half my time trying to digest what you're saying, David, and the other half of my time trying to think of what the hell question should I ask him after that.
It's a lot to digest. It's a ton.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even really know what to say because there's just so many different things going on here. But
what I would say is if you have kids in college right now, it's going to be very important to figure out your next steps in this calendar year. This calendar year will make through July 1st, I guess not calendar year, but next year of time, because the choices that you make are going to have very long effects on what you qualify for and what you're able to do moving forward. For example, if you've got loans out right now and your child take or you take out a loan for your child after July 1st of 2026, this is kind of where the unknown comes in, but will you be able to consolidate part of your loans and get them into that eligible ICR plan and then take out new loans that are only eligible for the standard repayment plan? I don't know. There's some nuance there that I don't know the exact how they're gonna play with these rules as we move forward. But I would be very careful if you're going to be a borrower for for your child in the next year or so.
This is remarkably similar to the Medicare decision you have to make, whether it's traditional Medicare or uh, so-called Medicare Advantage, which we're learning is in most cases a major disadvantage. These are often irreversible decisions. This is challenging. We're going to provide information um, in our show notes. We're going to link to your planning services, the public service loan forgiveness information, studentaid.gov. David, I know you have more information to go, but I just, if people, if it was me, I'd be getting overwhelmed right now. What can you tell them? I mean, obviously we have no financial tie to you, but we consider you now the Lone Ranger, but one of the good actors in this space. What can you do for people if they want to use your services?
The biggest thing is that when people come to me, they feel as though the student loan system has kind of beaten them down, right? And my whole I don't always get to say, hey, here's the golden ticket like I used to be able to say, but I can break it down and show them where they're at now and what options are available moving forward. And I think that that alone gives people so much peace of mind because it's complicated, it's messy, and to your point, if you make a wrong decision here, it can have long lasting impact. And the one part of the Parent Plus borrowers that is kind of brought on because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is that this new repayment plan, RAP, does not allow any parent borrower to go into that repayment plan. So RAP is off limits to parent borrowers, which is why you have to make decisions now because the other repayment plans will not be available in the future moving forward. So that's the kind of the kicker. And so your choices as a parent borrower are going to be move into ICR now, or if you don't, you're going to be shoved into the standard repayment, which won't qualify you for public service loan forgiveness. And so it's a tricky situation, and there's things that you can do now. The people that I'm going to feel well, there's going to be two subsets of people that I feel the worst for. One are going to be the parent borrowers who don't hear this information before July 1st of 2026, and the second are the ones that have kids in school right now that will be still taking out loans in after July 1st of 2026. Because if your child is still in school, a lot of times you cannot pull certain loans out. They're in what's called loan origination status. And so you can't consolidate them. You can't mess with them in any way, shape, or form. And so it's almost like, hey, we have to stop your education, make sure that we can get these loans to where we can navigate with them. And then it's just complicated. And the other issue is kind of like it's been for the last couple of years is that we don't have 100% of the answers. We have kind of ideas of where we think what will happen in the future, but there's just so much still unknown, and a lot of times people don't like to hear this, but a lot of times it's testing and seeing what happens in our world and in the student loan planning world, because there's actually a pretty good network of people that I rely on and talk to as well. And so somebody will say, hey, I'm going to try this thing and see if it works. And you don't really want to be the guinea pig, but at the same time, somebody's got to do it. And then we all say, oh, that worked the way that we thought it was, or it didn't work the way that we thought it was. And we can kind of go this new direction.
Sort of like the points and miles game. A lot of,
Exactly.
you know, so let me focus in a little bit more on the Parent Plus. Um, so our listeners, so Parent Plus loans are loans that parents take out for their child. This is in addition to just the regular like Stafford, direct Stafford loans that are either subsidized or unsubsidized. So they will take out. It used to be they could take out like up to the difference, and that is going to change. In fact, that's going to change dramatically.
Correct.
It seems like what's happening is they are trying to limit the amount of loans people can have, and then they are trying to limit the amount of payment methods that will prevent them from paying back the principal in full. Mind you, most people pay back multiples of the principal of the loan that they take out. Almost nobody who's had a loan forgiven didn't actually pay the entire principal, um, at least a dollar. So that's what it seems like to me. You're a Parent Plus borrower right now. And maybe you've got, okay, well, I'll give you an example. I've got a really good friend. Two of his kids graduated from college. I'm sure they have Parent Plus loans. One child just started. They got 3 or 4 years to go. I'm sure they're going to have Parent Plus loans. So they've got two kids with Parent Plus loans, another kid that's in college right now and is going to be taking them out. What are they what are they facing? Like what are their considerations right now with these loans that they should be thinking of?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that could be potentially happening there. So the first thing that they have to think about is, if they're public servant workers, if they qualify for PSLF, so that's anybody who's in public service or nonprofit, I would probably be considering for those first two children doing a direct consolidation and getting into that ICR plan to then qualify at some point for IBR when ICR goes away and maybe getting public service loan forgiveness. But the other side of that is trying to figure out, does public service loan forgiveness even make sense? And the rules have changed and the repayment plans have changed enough to where not everybody, it's not crystal clear that, hey, just because I'm a teacher and I have loans, PSLF is not necessarily the only route right now. Sometimes it's let's pay these things off more aggressively. Then for the kid that's still in school, the way that I think this is going to work is that you can do the direct consolidation of those other sets of loans. And then in school, those are going to go whenever the child graduates, assuming it's after 2026, which it sounds like it is, then those are going to go into the automatic standard repayment, which is a new repayment plan that basically consolidates the extended version of the old extended repayment plan and the old standard repayment plan. The way that the standard repayment plan works now, moving forward, is if you have less than $25,000, then you have a 10-year window to pay them off in. It sets you up automatically for a 10-year repayment plan. 25,000 to 49,999, you've got a 15-year window. 50,000 to 99,999, you've got a 20-year window. And anything over $100,000, you've got a 25-year window of repayment back. But there's no forgiveness options. It's just it's basically like an amortized loan that you're paying. And by the time you make the 25th year final payment, your balance is zero.
Okay.
So I don't know if that makes more confusion or not, but I would evaluate them on two separate bases of like, what do we qualify for on child 1 and 2? And what are we going to do with child number 3?
And so with a Parent Plus loan, the child doesn't have to be in public service if the parent is in public service?
So that's one of the interesting things about about Parent Plus loans is that it has no tie whatsoever to the child. Now, a lot of people may work out some sort of deal with their kids, like, hey, you're going to pay a certain amount of fee and I'm going to pay a certain amount of the repayment, whatever. But they are as the parent, they are your loans. It's 100% tied to you. It's 100% tied to your employment. It's 100% tied to your AGI if you're on an income-driven repayment plan. They are not the child's loans. And so that's where I will see a lot of people that are like, well, this is their loans. I'm like, well, they're not their loans. They're your loans that you took on behalf of your child, which is messed up for a lot of people because a lot of people didn't necessarily realize that they were taking that on when they did.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting to me because my wife is an educator, and we didn't take out any, or we didn't have to take out. We were lucky didn't have to take out any Parent Plus loans. for my son. We paid in cash, but now I'm thinking maybe we should have. If she was going to work for the 10 years, I didn't actually realize. God, I feel like such an idiot. This is what I say every single time you're on, David. I feel like such an idiot. Um, that a someone in government, even though the loan was not for their benefit, can have it forgiven because they work in government, not the person where the money was spent on. I got
Correct.
that right?
Yep.
God damn. Okay. Jeez.
But I will also say that being being debt free probably feels a lot better than trying to navigate some of these waters that are
Well,
that.
I mean, I don't disagree with that.
So to
I
your point on this, one of the other things that I think would be worth mentioning right now is that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, one of the provisions in there is borrowing limits that are going to
Yes.
take place.
Yeah, this is what I was going to ask you about. They severely curtail the amount of money that you can borrow, which is going to be a huge deal for
Huge deal.
people who are looking to become doctors, professionals, lawyers, get advanced degrees. Like this is potentially limiting advancement of hundreds of thousands of people. And I think this is going to be severely affect our healthcare system in the long run.
There will be lots of long-term ramifications. So number one, I think to your point, it's going to make it so that way it's way harder for people to qualify to even be able to go to these types of schools and to go after these types of degrees, especially doctors and things of that nature. The second thing that I think is lost on a lot of people is that I think it's going to have a severe impact on universities themselves.
Yeah.
Because if less people can qualify and if less people can go to school, and then there's going to be less people in the programs. If there's less people in the programs, then certain programs are going to have to shut down. Or so I think that there's going to be longer term effects than what a lot of people even realize. Um, the borrowing limits, let's talk about those real quick. But for Parent Plus borrowers, it's going to be $20,000 per child per year. Well, as an undergrad, very first year right out of the gate, I believe they get $5,500 that
Yeah.
the child can take on. And so if a parent can take out a maximum of 20,000, that means that now we're at 25,000 ish dollars. Well, that doesn't cover it for most people. So then the question is, where does the additional come from? And it's either going to have to come out of pocket, or I think we're going to see a substantial rise in private loans as well. Well, we will see a
Yeah.
substantial rise in private loans.
I
And
I feel like that's the point. This is
yeah,
a shift to pushing people into private loans.
exactly. It's trying to take it. I believe it's trying to take it away from the government taking on all of the responsibility of the loans and push it to the private sector. And I'll tell you from the work that I do, I see people that come to me all this regularly, right, with 15%
Yeah.
plus on their private loans.
I've seen this as well. It's disturbing.
Oh my gosh!
It's
And
like
if
a
you
credit card.
well, a credit card, but the thing is that the borrowing limits are so much higher that if
Yeah.
you've got $70,000 at 15% interest, pull out your calculator and see what that looks like for a yearly interest. It's not nice, right?
As if we haven't disadvantaged young people enough already on getting a house.
Yeah.
We have,
Well, and the irony is most of this money, Dan, is being spent on housing, not tuition.
That's
Think
true.
about it. If you go to a state school, tuition might be less than 10,000. The
yeah, it's the
housing alone,
housing.
just to live, could be $1,200 a month just for rent.
There,
Easy.
there was a story here. Maybe you heard it. It got a lot of national publicity where some kid who was from LA was going to Berkeley, which is in the Bay Area. He calculated it was cheaper to fly up for classes and live at home. You remember this story?
I
Yeah, I
saw
do
that one.
remember it.
I did see
Yeah.
that one.
It's so frustrating. Little backstory. Berkeley has got rampant NIMBYism, not in my backyard. They have fought housing developments for students and for others. It's interesting how all these problems kind of have a through line.
It's okay. So this is interesting that you bring this up. So I was looking at, ironically, the place that I moved to. Me and my wife moved to a two-bedroom apartment in Santa Ana while my wife was getting her master's degree. Santa Ana, California. Seven. it was like 725 a month. This is 1998, so a little while ago. My daughter is thinking about moving to Orange County and maybe going to community college after she graduates. And so we were looking to see what it would cost. I found the exact same apartment, like literally my apartment. How much do you think that apartment is per month?
What year was the year again, Scott?
1998.
I'm going to say
How many
2,500.
bedrooms again?
Two. No air
Two bedrooms.
conditioning.
I'm going to say $4,000.
Oh, that's okay, David.
I was saying 2,500.
Okay, David's a little closer. It was 2775,
Okay. I
and
went
I
big.
I don't know if that includes any utilities or parking. So it very well easily could be $3,000 a month. That is not if it kept up with inflation, it would be $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month, which is actually not terrible for a two bedroom in that area. Um, but like I had mentioned, a lot of the loans that we take out are for room and board. And
Mhm.
so you're literally like I was paying on my student loans for like a lot of room and board and housing is now so expensive that like you're paying interest on interest on interest on your housing just so you can go to college and then you still can't afford a mortgage. Anyways, I just and so now and then we're also making it more difficult to get these loans, which I get from the perspective of we should not, we're letting people borrow so much money. Like, I mean, I agree. Like people who are on a doctor track are taking out five, six, seven, $800,000 in loans, and some of these are at really high rates, or will have to be. But I mean, I think that means we should be doing things differently to get the healthcare professionals that we need. Um, I don't know.
There's
That was a
also
little bit off track, but this is
I
a
think I think it
problem.
was on track because to your point, it does greatly affect like where you go to school has a massive impact
Yeah.
in what you're going to be paying for housing with the tuition, with everything, room, board, books, all of the things that get included in those payments.
It would be interesting, and Dan, I want to hear your comment on this. How we see, because like there already is a massive transition going on in higher education, but it'll be interesting to see how this further transforms that, especially with community colleges, and online programs, because if you can't afford to live outside of your parents' house, you're gonna have to rely on an online program. Dan, what do you think?
Oh, Scott, you took the words out of my mouth. I think we're going to see an increase in community college programs and online, and I think state schools in your area. It makes logical sense to do that. I was also going to say colleges need a little bit of pressure, I think, to reduce costs. They have been able to, for decades, at rates well beyond inflation, to charge increasing amounts for tuition. Now, I also get that states used to subsidize colleges at a lot higher rate.
Yeah.
We went into a tax cutting frenzy in this country some time ago, and at some point, the bill is due. You hear this, you always hear these conversations about Europe, high taxes. But I've heard the argument, even though our taxes are technically lower, we pay more because we get a lot less. And again, that's a bigger, more nuanced conversation. But I just find, I've got a kid who starts school in 2 weeks. He'll be a junior in college. And luckily, we've been able to pay the overwhelming majority of it. But he's taken out some small loans, David. I think he did 5K the first year and 7,500 this year. So we're talking a small amount, and there's a chance he might get a scholarship for his senior year. But I feel for the thousands of families out there who have not been able to save, not been able to provide for their children. I just think alternative pathways are going to happen.
I think that this is a kind of a nice segue into the next thing I want to talk about, though, which is taxes. And I'm actually, for the people that are listening on their podcast, I'm going to share screen so that way you guys can see it. But so you might want to check out the YouTube version of this. But a lot of people say to me, like, what can we do? Right. And so one of the potential options is to file your taxes as married filing separately. And so this is an analysis that I run through with pretty much any of the ongoing clients that I have, and with certain the analysis is I run inside of Holistiplan, which doesn't allow me to do unlimited. So, but let's go through this and kind of take a look and I want to show you guys the benefits of filing separately. And so this example is a real life example. One of my clients, they allowed me to they gave me permission to use some of the information, and this is in Missouri. And so there's different things that take place when you're in like a community property state, for example, right? Which there's advantages and disadvantages to being in a community property state. There's also ways to go around community property state, because you can use the IRS tax returns on your student aid portal, or you can also do what's called an alternative documentation of income. And so you can show pay stubs. So in a community property state, if you're the higher borrower, you may want to use or the higher earner, you may want to use your IRS tax returns as they basically get combined and then divided by 2, right? But if you're the lower income earner, then using the community property rules doesn't benefit you. And that's where you can use your pay stubs and say, I want to use my pay stubs for my documentation of my income, and it will still show your lower income. And so there's a lot of nuances in there, and ways to fraudulently go around the system. But in this example here, we've got a spouse that makes $80,187. We've got, and can you guys see this on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the spouse that has the student loans is the teacher, makes $65,330. They've got 3 kids. So I've got this broken down into a married filing jointly column and a married filing separately column, and I'll go through and kind of talk through what these mean. So if you were to add up all of their income on the married filing jointly, they've got about $145,000 worth of income. If you file separately and only show your income, then the borrower that has the person that has the student loans makes $65,330. With their family size, you can actually include the spouse if they file together, but you cannot include the spouse if you file separately. So we've got the family size of 5 for filing jointly and 4 for filing separately. They use this thing called the Federal Poverty Guideline to figure out what you're actually going to be able to deduct off of your student loan, off of your adjusted gross income to get your student loan repayment. Anyways, it gets a lot more complicated. But once we do take the Federal Poverty Guideline and multiply it by the 1.5 multiplier, which applies to pay and IBR, what we get left is that they're basically taking into consideration for filing jointly that you have $89,000 worth of income. When you file separately, we've got $17,105 of income. And when you actually calculate the repayment that you owe per month, this is pay and on new IBR, which are the exact same terms, you have a $742 payment if you were to file jointly, compared to a $143 payment if you were to file separately. So when you look at that discrepancy, we're talking about almost $600 a month, which, let's do some quick math. That's $7,200 a year of difference. And where I will hear a lot of people push back on is like, okay, well, you save $7,200 in student loan payments, right? But what about the flip side? What about taxes? Well, don't worry, guys. I've got that taken care of here. I've run a tax projection using Holistiplan. Scott, have you ever used Holistiplan?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I love it, by the way. Not an ad for Holistiplan, but I just love the software. So I ran everything in here exactly the way that it would be, all the way through. And you have to take into consideration that there's some deductions that are going to be different. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. But where I like to look at is this number right here. Total tax owed for filing jointly, which is the left-hand column, it's $8,856. And for filing separately with this married couple in Missouri, it was a total of $9,256 for a grand total of tax owed $400 more and $7,200 less in student loan payments. So for this family, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
file separately, right? And so that's one of the things that I have a lot of people come to me with is like, what can we do? This is one strategy, and it doesn't work for everybody, right? Because we have to take into consideration what are each of your incomes, what does your family look like, what kind of deductions are you already getting. So there's some things that you lose. So let's talk about this real quick. I don't know if you guys have discussed it on a previous episode or not, but when you file separately, you lose out on some things, right? So number one, you have to either both use the standard deduction or both itemize. You don't get to do one or the other, or you don't get to each choose your own. Let's put it that way. You lose out on the child and dependent care credit. Okay.
Oh,
That's not
wow.
that big of a deal because you can still use the dependent care FSA, and that just got raised in the One Big Beautiful Bill
True.
Act. So that kind of offsets that. There's no education tax credits. So you lose out on the lifetime learning credit and the American Opportunity Tax Credit. That's a big deal. You lose out on all of your student loan interest deduction. Well, we haven't really had much of that in the past. We will again in the future. So that's something to take into consideration. Filing separately, you cannot really contribute to a Roth IRA unless you do the backdoor Roth IRA. So there's some rules around that. Community property states, I just like to mention again that it's where it gets very fuzzy in states where you are, where you have to look at community property. And then using that alternative documentation of income is something that can be super beneficial as well, kind of depending on what state you're in. But they use gross income when they do this alternative documentation of income, gross income, not your AGI, which is basically all of your deductions coming out, insurance, 403Bs, pre-tax retirement accounts, HSAs, FSAs, all those things. So that's just an important little piece to discuss. But when we look at this again from just can you save money on your student loans? Yeah, there's options out there. There's things that you can potentially do. It's not cut and dry, but I'm gonna stop sharing here and let you guys ask some questions.
I'm going to ask a slightly off topic, but I think related question. Does the average person sitting in the teacher lounge selling annuities for commission, are they able to do this kind of work?
You know the answer, but absolutely not.
Yeah, and yet they call themselves financial advisors.
Yeah, registered representatives.
Most of them are just selling fixed annuities, and they're not even registered representatives. This is, it's also a little frustrating, I think, because like I think people are stressed as it is, and this is so complicated. And you come home on the weekend, you just want to relax, have a beer, a glass of wine, your favorite cocktail, or whatever it is, and then you have to like get into this. And like I thought 403B stuff was kind of complicated. Like this is a Gordian knot. Um, so,
Yeah,
but I mean, but it's good to know that there are options. There are some solutions. It's not all, not all hope is lost. I think it's a little disappointing that we have to like pay someone to do this work, but it seems like it makes sense to make it's an investment. You're making an investment into your student loans. And again, we didn't bring you onto this podcast to like try to bring you business. We're trying to make people aware that they do have options, that they need to look into this stuff. Um, what resources, if people maybe don't have the funds to pay you, or someone else like you, what resources, where should they go to learn more about this?
yeah, that's a great question. So I have not done a great job of updating it recently, but I try to keep my blog pretty up to date. So that would be a resource that I could point people to. The second one that I like a lot is, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, but there's a student loan. Their company is Student Loan Planner.
Yeah.
They do student loan consultations, very similar to what I do. But Travis Hornsby is the one that runs the company, and he does an incredible job of getting information out there. And he's got a paid version of his newsletter and a free version of his newsletter. And the free version actually has a lot of information. I think that the biggest hiccup, maybe potential with him, is that the knowledge is so in depth that like sometimes I read it and I'm like, let me think about that for a little bit. And if you didn't have that baseline of knowledge, it would be challenging to disseminate that information as well. Studentaid.gov is where I will go to for, all the press releases, new releases, anything that comes out. But again, it's like drinking from the fire hose, right? And you get
Yeah.
so much information, it's so overwhelming, that it's not always the best place to turn to. But there's a good amount of student loan planners that put out probably other information. I don't know exactly. I don't have somebody that say, hey, talk to this person, but or listen or read their blog or anything like that. But I think that the student loan planner resources are very, very valuable.
I've been writing down these or noting these. So I'm going to share K-12 Planning, which is your company, David.
Correct.
Is that where your blog would be found?
It is, yeah.
Okay, because you mentioned you're trying your best. We understand how the demands on your time, but you're trying your best to keep that up to date. I found a story by CNBC called Student Loan Repayment Plans Have Shifted. I'll include that. Studentaid.gov, of course, Student Loan Planner. Anything else? Any other outlets?
I think those are probably the main ones right now.
I know the New
Okay.
York Times had a really in-depth article, but you also have to have a subscription to access it. And it was the great Tara, right? Tara Bernard Siegel, or is it Siegel Bernard? Scott, I'm sorry.
Tara Siegel Bernard.
Tara Siegel Bernard from the New York Times. She is fantastic. She did the 403B series all those years ago. I'll include that for those who have a
There are a
subscription.
couple others that are coming to mind right now. So one of the writers that actually writes on student loan planners blog posts, his name is Adam Minsky. He does an incredible job, but he does a lot of writing for Forbes, and his stuff is he somehow gets the information before everybody else. I don't know how he does that, but but I'm slightly jealous of that. But he does put out really good quality pieces. And then there was a Kitsis article recently where I believe that actually you guys know Ryan Freilich, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, we love
Oh
Ryan.
yeah.
Yeah, so Ryan Freilich and somebody else co-authored a piece for the Kitsis article. But again, it's one of those where you have to have a baseline of knowledge. Like I was
Yeah.
reading it and I was like, man, if people don't understand what's going on to begin with, and I think probably mine, if you listen to this episode and you don't have a baseline of knowledge, like your head might be spinning, right? Because even trying to even trying to make it simple, there's so many terms, there's so many numbers that come into play that people are like, how'd you get that number, or where did that come from, or what does ICR mean again? It's like it gets so complicated so quickly, and there's just not a good way. As a former teacher, my whole goal is to simplify things as much as possible. And so as I was writing out my notes for this episode, I started kind of, it was the chuckle that's not really a laugh. It's like the laugh cry emoji, right? Where it's like, you're kind of laughing and kind of crying at the same time. But it's like there's no possible way to simplify this without not getting the information out there.
David, you told us what your hard stop was. How many more minutes do we have with you? Because I have another question I want to ask.
15 or so. So ask away.
Okay, so it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the plan that is going to be the new plan, if you're able to move into an income-based repayment plan, is the RAP plan, the repayment assistant plan. Is that correct?
After 2020, after July 1st of 2026, that's the only repayment plan available to new borrowers and anybody who consolidates their loans.
Okay.
Anybody else could choose to move over to that one, and it might make sense. The RAP plan is likely going to be better for a lot than the old IBR.
Okay. Can we spend a little bit of time? This was my last question that I had. You might have some other stuff to go over, but can you talk about the RAP
Sure.
plan?
So
And,
RAP
and
plan
can you
is
do it in a RAP?
I was thinking that I needed to have a rap, but I don't have that. I didn't create that, but maybe somewhere that may be I put out a newsletter each week, and that might be a newsletter as a rap. Um, so RAP
It's a
is
RAP.
based on your adjusted gross income. right? And so you can do it filed jointly, filed separately, either one. If you have less than $10,000 of AGI, adjusted gross income, so that's line 11 of your 1040 if you're looking at your tax return. If you have less than $10,000, which I don't know exactly who that applies to, probably not most teachers, but if you have less than $10,000, you will make a minimum $10 a month payment. There's no $0 payment moving forward. If you have between $10,000 and $19,999, you pay 1% of your AGI. So 10,000, you see the number at the beginning, 1%. 20,000 to 29,999, you pay 2% of your AGI. 30,000, 3%, 40,000, 4%, 50,000, 5%, so on and so forth, until you get to $100,000 of adjusted gross income, and anything above 100,000 is 10% of your adjusted gross income. There are still child deductions. Well, first of all, let me say you can file jointly or separately, so you can still only show your income if you're a married borrower. There's also a child deduction as a $50 per month reduction in payment per child. So if you get, let's work through some numbers here and we can talk about that. So if you've got $65,000 of adjusted gross income, that means you're in the six range, right? Six. So you take 6% of your income or adjusted gross income. So $3,900 divided by 12, $325 a month would be your monthly payment. If you've got one kid, you can subtract $50. If you've got two, you can subtract $100. Three kids, $150 off that. And so the repayment assistance program is not going to be for people who are not high income borrowers. It's not really that bad of a plan. As a matter of fact, it's better in most cases than the version of the old IBR. New IBR for people that took out loans after July 1st of 2014 will, I think in most scenarios that I've come across, new IBR wins. So in my order of operations from a high level, which is not this does not apply to every single person, right? Like that's the hard part. But what I've generally seen is that if you qualify for the new version of IBR, that's going to be your best route. If you don't, then RAP would be the second best option, and then the old version of IBR is the third best option. Now, there's some nuances in there, right? Like the repayment assistance program does not have that cap on your total payment, whereas the old version of IBR does have that cap. So you only pay up to your 10-year standard repayment amount. So there could be a situation where if you're a high income borrower, or if you're a high income earner who is a borrower, old IBR might be better for you. So there's a lot of, I say that to say, work through the numbers or have somebody help you work through the numbers, and don't just listen and say, David said, do this, because every situation is different. But the RAP is not nearly as bad as what some people originally thought it might be.
Okay. Okay. So someone who just got out of college, maybe last year, they're in this, I don't know what you call it.
Save forbearance.
They're in save, yeah, which is like in this nebulous area, but they're in
Purgatory,
save.
we can call it.
Purgatory, there you go. What's their path here? So they could get out of save now and go into RAP, or is RAP not yet ready? It's only IBR.
RAP is not available right now.
RAP's not available. Okay.
They could go into pay or new IBR right now. And it kind of depends on what they're trying to do long term, and what they want to, like, if you're going for public service loan forgiveness, do you want to rely on potential PSLF buyback, which we didn't even get to talk about that today? But do you want to try for, this unknown of if it's going to be around, or do you want to switch to a repayment plan that is going to count for PSLF credit and get those credits rolling right away? There's a lot of, and the other thing is what's going to exactly happen with save. I have no clue. We can make, guesses at it, but it's anybody's guess as to what the official court ruling is going to be when that time finally comes.
And I mean, save was kind of like this fantasy plan. It was so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like I mean, I can't even describe how good it was for people. It was the first real repayment plan where I thought, man, there are so many Americans that can benefit from this and will benefit from this. What a remarkable thing. And it's, I mean, I think it's probably gone.
Yeah.
Um,
They would have been better off not even having dangled it in front of us.
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
what we got used to before was making a certain payment. Then COVID happened and no payments. Then they said
yeah.
you're going to have this incredible repayment, and then they said actually you're not going to, and your income's gone way, way, way up since 2019. So now you're going to pay a ton more. So, so yeah, it's the old catch 22.
Okay, well, I know we only got you for a few more minutes. So what else would you like to share with it? Is there anything else you'd like to share with us for this episode?
That's it as far as what I had from that I had prepared. But yeah, we've got a couple more minutes. If you guys have any other last final statements, final thoughts, anything like that that you guys want to toss out.
I got a question for you personally. We keep bringing you on here as a student loan planner, but you are more than a student loan planner. You're a full-on financial planner. You have your own financial planning firm. You work with educators. You have other areas of expertise. Does it bother you at all that like you sometimes get pigeonholed as a student loan planner? I mean, is this like, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars? He was always going to be just that, or do you enjoy it? Like, what are your yeah, how does this affect you personally?
No, it's the opposite. I would say that student loan planning has opened so many doors for me. And if there's educators out there, I know there's I've talked to a ton, right, over the years of educators that want to leave education and get into financial planning. What I
Hmm.
always tell people is if you can understand the student loan system, then that opens up the doors to possibilities. And, it's super hard to get into school districts to talk to people
Yeah.
because you've got these, crappy 403B companies that are coming in and doing all their work. Schools don't want to let financial professionals in. But guess what? They bring me in and pay me to do presentations for schools. I get invited onto your guys' podcast to talk student loans. Next Gen Personal Finance has invited me for the past 3 years to come and do their PD days that they offer at the beginning of the year. I have NEAs and FPAs, Financial Planning Associations. I've done presentations for two of them. Financial Experts Network, which is a great network, invited me on. So I think it's when you have something that's super super niche that a lot of people don't know about. I think that it opens the doors to possibilities. And then whenever I work with people and I say, hey, here's the student loan side of it. If that's all that you're looking for, then that's great. But here's some other things that we can do. And it's led me to meet people that I might not have met otherwise. Let's put it that way. So I love it.
Well, you're very good at it. We should point out again, you've been on, this is, I don't know if we told you, this is your seventh appearance. You are a record setter, or you tied Cullen Roche, right?
I think Roche might have been on 6 times, so this might be a record.
Because we
But
did
also Cullen might have been
two-parter.
on 7 because we turned one of his into a two-parter. So technicality might have you tied.
And if you haven't had the pleasure of listening to the previous six, please know that you are a former teacher, so you understand on a very personal level what educators go through. And again, we love seeing fiduciary advisors. I should back up. We love seeing former teachers who want to leave and who want to go into financial planning becoming the kind of advisor you are. The bonus is if you're an educator out there, you're working with someone who understands the demands of your job.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned on a previous episode, but former teacher myself, wife is a former teacher. Both of my parents are retired teachers, aunts and uncles retired teachers, grandparents retired teachers. So yeah, it was the family profession for a long time.
Oh, I love it. So, Scott, a lot of times we'll hear from people that like a guest and they know the guest has been on a few times. They'll go back and listen to the previous pods with the guest. We would encourage them not to listen to the previous pods with David because the information is all so different. Unless you are really a detailed person and want to follow the myriad of changes.
It's crazy, isn't it? changes that, and that's why you guys have had to bring me on so much, is because every week new information comes out.
Well, David, you know this. You are welcome any day, anytime. You let us know, okay? We so enjoy knowing you. We so enjoy interviewing you, and we are so appreciative of all you have done, David. So again, thank you for all you do.
I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you very much.